Hey, Don Stanley here from 3 Rhino Media with your 3 Rhino Media tip for this month. Last month we talked about the idea of finding methods for collecting customer questions. So when you think about being a leader in your industry in terms of providing valuable insights, valuable information to your customers, you're able to know what it is that they're thinking about, what it is that they need, and you're able to think about, okay, now that we gathered that, what's the next step? So the next step is, it's going to be a couple of items that I want to talk about. The first one is, one of the big things I want you to pay attention to is the idea that when you start creating content, and that can be blog posts, it can be videos, it can be audio, it can be email newsletters, a wide variety of things, you want to start thinking about empowering your staff. One of my good friends, Krista Controlla, is the Vice President of Marketing at Block Imaging, and she has a phenomenal example with the Block Imaging company, where when she originally started working with Block Imaging, one person was creating all of the content for the company blog and learning center, and that one person was trying to meet with as many people as they could within the organization and talk about the MRI, refurbished MRI equipment that they sold. And one of the challenges was there was a lot of technical information, a lot of things that she couldn't necessarily explain or that couldn't be conveyed in writing. And so what they did is they decided to adopt a content marketing strategy, thanks to Marcus Sheridan, where what they would do is they would have their employees help answer customer questions that they received. So the engineers who were receiving questions about the quality of refurbished MRI equipment and how valuable it was or how trustworthy it was, whatever it was, they became active participants in the content production for that company. And that did a couple of things. One is it allowed the internal expertise of the organization to shine through. Now, the engineers and other staff, it ended up being over, I think, 60 people now contribute to that blog rather than the one. What ended up happening was that people started sharing their information and their expertise, and across the board, people within the organization got a better understanding of what was going on, what was happening, and how they could help interact with customers in more effective ways. Another thing that happened was that people who traditionally felt like their voices might not be that important, started to see the value in the information that they were providing, because the writers and the editors would take the information they were given, they would massage it to make it, have a baseline standard of quality, but that they could start to see that on the company blog and on the company website, through company email newsletters, that information and knowledge that they had gathered was being shared, and it increased people's morale. And so one of the big ideas that you want to think about when you think about being a leader in this industry is, now that you've collected the customer questions, the next step is to start to get those answers. And I want to encourage you to empower the staff that works directly with the customers to help provide that information. In some cases, what can happen is a person who was a great writer and you never knew it might be able to help write initial drafts of blog posts, or they might be really good in front of a camera and they might really enjoy being in front of the camera, and they might be able to provide video answers like what we're doing here, but they might have the personality that really comes across well in videos. Or maybe they want to provide audio, or maybe they just want to provide some text that a writer can then take. Regardless of what the opportunity is, what ends up happening is the quality information that customers are getting is better, and you're also internally building morale and building internal capacity and efficiency. Again, Krista Controlla from Block Imaging, I've interviewed her once. I'll post the link to the the audio interview with her on my website, but she's done a phenomenal job with this. So when you start to think about how are we going to answer these, I want you to think about incorporating your employees into the process. And as I already mentioned, the first step is to think about, how do we get this information out? One of the best ways to get the information out is to use a company blog. Now, I like to call it a learning center. So it's a center where somebody can go and learn about the questions that are salient to them. It's a place to educate your customer and provide the information that they need to know to make a decision. Now, blog is nothing more than a place where you have multiple articles that can be, again, audio, video, text, that what they do is they answer a customer's question. And so that should be an ongoing repository of questions. Anytime anybody gets asked a question, they should jot down the question, form some type of system for collecting those questions, and then put together the answers. One of my good friends, Marcus Sheridan, he is a great mentor and a huge leader in the content marketing arena. He did this with a swimming pool website, and on his swimming pool website, he now has over 800 blog posts just about swimming pools. Because yes, people want lots of information. So that's the first thing to think about is, okay, can we put up a blog and then start putting your answers together? And simply do that. When you write the blog post titles, I'm going to encourage you to think like a human being. Now this will help with search, with Google search results and others as well, is to phrase your blog titles as questions the way your customer would ask them. Because when a customer is typing into Google or talking into their phone, whether they're using an Android or an iPhone, they're asking questions the way a human would. And the titles that get the best response in search are the ones that are phrased the way a customer would ask. So first, you're going to empower your internal audience, your staff and employees to help create content. Next is you're going to start sharing that with a blog on your website. And again, that can be audio, video, it could be text, whatever is most efficient and easiest for you. Now, the third thing that I want to talk about when it takes, how else can you use this information, is you can create bigger pieces of content. So the example that I like to use is an ebook. So what, for example, let's say for example with the MRI company, maybe there's 10 frequently asked questions that you see, that you hear all the time, or your website data shows are asked regularly. One thing you can do is you can take those 10 questions and package them in a downloadable ebook. And what we'll often do with our clients is we'll have what's called a lead capture form. So if somebody wants to get this free ebook, what they have to do is they give their name, their email, and some other information, and it allows us to start some type of relationship with that person. We don't send out unsolicited emails, but basically what we start doing is we start monitoring what types of information is this person looking for, so our sales team can be as helpful as possible when somebody reaches out. You can also do the same thing if you don't want to put together an ebook, although that is usually low-hanging fruit because you're just transferring what you have on the blog into a book, is you can also do webinars. Webinars are a great idea, as well as white papers. We're also seeing that check sheets are really popular. So for example, one of the things you might have are the 5 most important items to have reviewed before you purchase an MRI machine. And that could be just a 5-point checklist as an example. So the idea being that now that you gathered the questions, it's up to you to rely on your staff, whether it's a staff of 1 or a staff of 100, to start providing valuable content that you can then share and establish yourself again as the thought leader in your arena. And that's really the biggest thing. The biggest thing here, the biggest goal is to demonstrate that you've really listened and you've really thought about what a person is looking for, and you've provided high quality, high value answers. That's what starts to establish you as a leader in the external community. And when you start to involve your employees as a part of that process, you start to build this internal leadership where people feel ownership over the process and they feel a sense of pride in the process. And that is a very, very cool thing to be doing. So step number 1, again, what we're going to do is empower. Step number 2, what you're going to do is create that blog or that learning center. And step number 3 is going to be the ebooks, webinar, etc. So that's your tip for the month. If you have any questions for me, always feel free to reach out to me. I am at 3Rhino Media, the number 3 Rhino Media on Twitter. You can find me, Don Stanley, on LinkedIn or at www.3rhinomedia.com. I hope that this month's tip is helpful to you. And if you ever have any questions for me, again, reach out. I'm more than happy to answer them for you. Here's to your success.